The sound of skin meeting skin echoed through the living room like a thunderclap. Naomi hit the hardwood floor, her cheek burning where Trevor's hand had connected. She tasted copper on her tongue and realized she'd bitten the inside of her mouth. The pain was sharp, immediate, and completely unexpected. In 8 years of marriage, Trevor had never raised his hand to her. Until tonight. "Don't you dare talk to her like that." Trevor stood over Naomi, his face twisted with rage she didn't recognize. Beside him, Bethany stood in the blue dress Naomi had seen charged to their joint credit card last month. The woman's red lipstick was smudged, and her hair was messy in a way that made Naomi's stomach turn. Naomi pushed herself up on her elbows, trying to process what had just happened. She'd come home early from her mother's house because she'd forgotten her laptop. The last thing she'd expected was to find her husband with another woman in their home, on their couch, his shirt unbuttoned and her shoes kicked off by the door. "I'm your wife," Naomi said, her voice shaking. "You hit me. You actually hit me." "You called her a homewrecker," Trevor shot back, helping Bethany to her feet with a gentleness he'd never shown Naomi. "You humiliated her." Naomi stared at him, wondering if she'd entered some alternate reality. "She's a homewrecker. She's in my home. With my husband." Bethany spoke for the first time, her voice high and nasal. "Maybe if you were a better wife he wouldn't need me." She pressed herself against Trevor's side, and he wrapped his arm around her waist protectively. The absurdity of the situation would have been funny if Naomi's face wasn't throbbing. She pulled herself to her feet, gripping the edge of the coffee table for support. Her reflection caught in the TV screen. A red mark was already blooming across her brown skin, stark and undeniable. "Get out," Trevor said coldly. "This is my house." "Our house," Naomi corrected automatically. "My name is on the deed too." "Then I'll buy you out." "I don't want to see your face right now." Naomi looked at the stranger wearing her husband's face. Trevor had been her high school sweetheart. They'd built this life together from nothing. She'd supported him through business school, worked 2 jobs so he could focus on his studies, celebrated every promotion with him. And now he was ordering her out of their home for the woman he was cheating with. Bethany smirked, running her hand up Trevor's chest. "We'll redecorate anyway. This place is so outdated." Something shifted in Naomi in that moment. The shock and pain crystallized into clarity. She straightened her spine and walked toward the bedroom, ignoring Trevor's command to leave immediately. She grabbed her purse, her laptop, and her phone charger. At the last second, she took her grandmother's photo from the nightstand. "Where do you think you're going?" Trevor followed her to the doorway. "Away from you." Naomi's voice was steady now. "Enjoy your life, Trevor. I'm done." "Just like that? You're giving up on us." The audacity made Naomi laugh, a sound without humor. "You gave up on us the second you brought her into our home. Into our bed, I'm assuming." Trevor had the decency to look away. "That's what I thought." Naomi walked past him, past Bethany who was now lounging on the couch like she owned the place. She grabbed her car keys from the hook by the door. "You'll come crawling back," Bethany called out. "You need him more than he needs you." Naomi paused at the door, looking back one last time. Trevor and Bethany stood together in the living room of the home Naomi had decorated, the life she'd built. But instead of heartbreak, she felt something unexpected: relief. "I'll send for the rest of my things," she said quietly. "My lawyer will be in touch." She left, closing the door on 8 years of marriage and the man she'd thought she'd grow old with. As she drove away, passing the familiar streets of their neighborhood, Naomi realized her hands had stopped shaking. Her face still hurt and she knew there would be bruising. But she also knew with absolute certainty that she would never spend another night under the same roof as Trevor again. At a red light, she caught sight of herself in the rearview mirror. The mark on her face was darkening, a physical reminder of how far Trevor had fallen. She thought about calling someone but realized she didn't want to explain this to anyone yet. Not her mother, not her friends. Not until she'd figured out her next steps. Instead, Naomi drove to a hotel on the nice side of town. She checked in under her maiden name, Rodriguez, which she'd kept as her middle name after marriage. The receptionist, a young woman with kind eyes, noticed Naomi's face but didn't comment. She simply upgraded Naomi's room without charge and pointed her toward the elevators. In the quiet safety of the hotel room, Naomi finally allowed herself to feel everything. But she didn't cry. She'd thought she would collapse once she was alone, but instead she felt strangely calm. She took photos of her face from multiple angles, documenting the bruise that was spreading across her cheekbone. Then she sat down with her laptop and began researching divorce lawyers. By midnight, she'd sent consultation requests to 3 top-rated family law attorneys. She'd also opened a spreadsheet and begun listing every joint asset, every shared account, every piece of their intertwined financial life. Years of working as a marketing consultant had taught her the value of preparation and documentation. Her phone buzzed repeatedly. Trevor calling. Trevor texting. Apologies mixed with accusations, a confused mess of "I'm sorry," and "you made me do it." Naomi read them all but didn't respond. Each message simply strengthened her resolve. At 2 in the morning, Naomi finally looked up from her laptop. Her face ached, her back was sore from sitting, but she had a plan. 3 lawyer consultations scheduled for tomorrow, a list of their assets, and screenshots of Trevor's texts admitting to the affair. She had everything she needed to start over. She walked to the bathroom and carefully washed her face, wincing when the water touched her bruised cheek. Looking at herself in the mirror, Naomi saw something she hadn't seen in years: determination. She'd spent so long being Trevor's supportive wife that she'd forgotten who she was before him. Naomi Rodriguez, she said to her reflection, using her full maiden name. Time to remember what you're made of. She turned off the light and climbed into the hotel bed. Tomorrow would bring challenges, hard conversations, and the beginning of the end of her marriage. But tonight, for the first time in longer than she could remember, Naomi fell asleep feeling like herself again. The woman who went to sleep that night wasn't the same one who'd walked into her living room hours earlier. That Naomi had been a wife first, a person second. This Naomi was someone new. Someone who wouldn't accept less than she deserved. Someone who wouldn't forget the sound of that slap or the sight of her husband choosing another woman over their vows. And someone who would never, ever let Trevor make her feel small again. The morning after leaving Trevor brought a strange sort of peace. Naomi woke in the hotel room with sunlight streaming through unfamiliar curtains, her face sore but her mind crystal clear. She ordered room service, something she never did at home where Trevor complained about wasted money, and ate slowly while reviewing her notes from the night before. Her first lawyer consultation was at 10. Attorney Patricia Reeves came highly recommended, with a reputation for fighting hard for her clients in divorce cases. Naomi arrived 15 minutes early, her bruised face partially covered with makeup, wearing a green blazer that gave her confidence. Patricia was a woman in her 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She took one look at Naomi's face and said, "Tell me everything." Naomi did. She explained the 8-year marriage, Trevor's affair with Bethany, coming home early and finding them together. She described the confrontation, the hit, being ordered out of her own home. Patricia listened without interruption, taking notes on a legal pad. "You took photos of your injuries?" Patricia asked when Naomi finished. "Yes. And he sent texts afterward that I've saved. Some apologizing, some blaming me." "Good. That helps us establish a pattern of abuse and gives us grounds for an emergency protective order if needed." Patricia leaned forward. "Here's what I need you to understand. This process won't be quick, but it can be clean if you're smart about it. Do you have access to your financial records?" "Everything. I managed our accounts." "Then here's what we do. Today you're going to open a new bank account in your name only. You'll transfer exactly half of any joint savings. Document everything. We'll file for divorce this week, citing adultery and domestic violence. You'll request temporary exclusive use of the marital home." Naomi's heart raced. "Can we do that? With photos of that bruise and his texts admitting to the affair?" "Absolutely. He hit you while defending his mistress in your shared home. A judge will side with you." Patricia's smile was fierce. "By the end of the week, Trevor will be the one looking for a place to stay." They spent another hour going through details. Naomi signed a retainer agreement, gave Patricia access to her documentation, and left feeling like she had an army behind her. The consultation had cost more than she'd expected, but Patricia assured her they'd recoup those costs from Trevor in the settlement. Next, Naomi went to a different bank than the one she shared with Trevor. She opened a checking and savings account, transferred exactly half of their joint savings as Patricia had instructed, and set up direct deposit for her consulting income. Each action felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. The hardest part came next, going back to the house for her belongings. Patricia had advised bringing a police officer to escort her, so Naomi had scheduled a civil standby for 2 that afternoon. When she pulled up to the house with Officer Martinez following in his patrol car, she felt safer than she had in days. Trevor's car wasn't in the driveway. Coward, Naomi thought. He'd known she was coming. Officer Martinez waited in the living room while Naomi methodically packed. She took her clothes, her books, her grandmother's quilts, family photos, her desk and computer setup. Anything that was solely hers or had sentimental value. She left behind the furniture they'd bought together and anything Trevor had purchased. She wanted nothing that would tie her to him. In the bedroom, she noticed the sheets had been changed. Fresh ones in a color she'd never bought. Bethany was already making herself at home. The realization didn't hurt as much as Naomi thought it would. Instead, it made her pack faster. "You good?" Officer Martinez asked when she carried the last box to her car. "Getting there," Naomi replied honestly. She drove her packed car to a storage unit she'd rented that morning, unloaded everything and then headed to look at apartments. She'd made 3 viewing appointments, all for places in a neighborhood on the other side of town. Fresh start, fresh location. The 3rd apartment she saw was perfect. A 2-bedroom on the 8th floor with huge windows and a view of the city park. The rent was higher than she was used to, but her consulting business was doing well, and she'd just landed 2 new clients. The landlord, Mrs. Chin, was a tiny woman with a warm smile who didn't ask questions about why Naomi needed to move in immediately. "First and last month's rent, security deposit, and you can have the keys today," Mrs. Chin said. Naomi wrote the check without hesitation. By 5 that evening she had a new apartment, a new bank account, and a lawyer ready to file divorce papers. She spent that night on an air mattress in her empty apartment, eating takeout and planning her next moves. Her phone continued buzzing with messages from Trevor, but she'd stopped reading them. Patricia had advised her to keep them for evidence but not to respond. On Wednesday, Patricia called. "Papers are filed. Trevor will be served at his office tomorrow morning." His office. Naomi hadn't expected that. You want it clean and fast. Nothing motivates a man like Trevor to settle quickly like public embarrassment. His co-workers will see him being served. Word will spread. It'll make him more agreeable to our terms. The next morning, Naomi was in a client meeting when her phone vibrated repeatedly. She ignored it until lunch, then saw 15 missed calls from Trevor and dozens of texts. She opened one at random. "How could you have me served at work? Everyone knows now. You've humiliated me." Naomi almost laughed. He'd hit her, kicked her out of their home, and now he was upset about being embarrassed? She forwarded the message to Patricia and blocked Trevor's number. Any communication could go through their lawyers now. The next 2 weeks were a blur of legal paperwork, moving furniture from storage to her apartment, and rebuilding her daily routine. Naomi threw herself into work, taking on extra projects and networking with potential new clients. Her consulting business specialized in brand repositioning for small companies, and she was good at it. Really good. She'd started the business 3 years into her marriage when she'd realized Trevor's income alone wouldn't support the lifestyle they wanted. At first, Trevor had been dismissive, calling it a hobby. But when her first-year revenue exceeded his salary, his attitude had shifted to resentment. He'd stopped asking about her work, stopped celebrating her wins, stopped seeing her as a partner. Looking back now, Naomi realized the marriage had been failing for years. She'd just been too busy trying to hold it together to notice. A month after filing for divorce, Naomi attended a networking event for local business owners. She wore a red dress that made her feel powerful, her hair in natural curls she'd been straightening for years because Trevor preferred it that way. Several people complimented her and she collected 3 new client leads. At the event, she ran into an old friend from college, Simone, who owned a successful PR firm. "Naomi Rodriguez, is that you?" Simone's eyes widened. "Girl, you look amazing. Different but amazing." They grabbed coffee after the event, and Naomi found herself telling the whole story. Simone listened, outraged on Naomi's behalf, and then said something that stuck with Naomi. "You know what? This is probably the best thing that could have happened to you. Not the abuse, obviously, that's terrible. But getting away from Trevor? He was always kind of controlling even back in college. You're going to thrive without him." That night, lying in her new apartment on furniture she'd picked out herself, Naomi thought about Simone's words. She'd been with Trevor since she was 19. She'd never lived alone, never made major decisions without considering his opinion first, never just existed as herself. At 32 she was starting over. And for the first time she wasn't scared. She was excited. Her phone rang. "Patricia. Good news? Trevor wants to settle. He's agreed to most of our terms. We should have this wrapped up in 2 months. That was fast. Apparently Bethany is pregnant and pushing for a quick resolution so they can move on." Naomi processed this information. Trevor was going to be a father. With a woman he'd cheated with. A year ago that news would have destroyed her. Now she felt nothing but relief that it wasn't her tied to him forever. "Let's get it done," Naomi said. "I'm ready to close this chapter." As she hung up, Naomi looked around her apartment. At the art she'd chosen, the colors she loved, the space that was entirely hers. This was just the beginning. Trevor had broken something when he hit her, but in doing so, he'd also set her free. And Naomi was just starting to realize how powerful freedom could be. 3 months after filing for divorce, Naomi signed the final papers in Patricia's office. Trevor hadn't shown up in person, sending his lawyer instead. He'd agreed to a settlement that gave Naomi half of everything, including half the equity in the house he'd tried to kick her out of. She'd walked away with enough money to feel secure and the closure she needed. "How do you feel?" Patricia asked as Naomi stood to leave. "Free," Naomi answered honestly. And she was. The divorce was final, her maiden name was legally restored, and Trevor was permanently in her past. According to mutual acquaintances she hadn't blocked, he and Bethany were living together in the house, fighting constantly and struggling financially. Bethany's pregnancy had been a false alarm or possibly a lie to pressure Trevor. Either way, Naomi didn't care. She'd spent the past 3 months building a life she loved. Her consulting business had grown to the point where she'd had to turn down clients. She developed a specialty in hospitality marketing, helping hotels and restaurants refresh their brands. The work was challenging and creative, exactly what she needed. Her apartment had transformed from empty space to a home that reflected her personality. Deep green walls in the living room, artwork from local Black artists, plants everywhere, and a home office setup that rivaled any corporate space. She'd invested in herself in ways she never had during her marriage. Naomi had also started therapy, something she'd resisted at first but now considered essential. Dr. Williams, her therapist, had helped her process not just the violence and betrayal, but years of subtle manipulation and control she hadn't recognized while living through it. "You mentioned Trevor didn't like you wearing bright colors," Dr. Williams had said during one session. "Can you tell me more about that?" Naomi had explained how Trevor preferred her in neutral tones, said bright colors were unprofessional, made comments about her appearance that slowly shaped how she dressed. She hadn't noticed it happening, the gradual erosion of her choices. "That's a form of control," Dr. Williams explained gently. "Small at first, but it adds up. And it makes leaving harder because you've forgotten who you were before the relationship." The observation had hit hard. But it also explained why Naomi now felt such joy in choosing her own clothes, decorating her own space, making decisions without checking with anyone else first. She was rediscovering herself. She'd also reconnected with friends she'd drifted from during her marriage. Simone had become a close friend again, introducing Naomi to her circle of successful, independent women who lifted each other up. They had monthly dinners where they celebrated wins, offered advice on challenges, and reminded each other of their worth. At one such dinner, 4 months post-divorce, Simone brought up dating. "Have you thought about getting back out there?" Naomi nearly choked on her wine. "Absolutely not. I'm still figuring out who I am without Trevor. The last thing I need is another man." The other women laughed, but not unkindly. "Fair enough," said Jordan, who ran a successful catering company. "But when you're ready, don't settle. You deserve someone who sees your value." "If I ever date again," Naomi said firmly, "it won't be for a long time. And it'll be someone completely different from Trevor. Someone who respects me." The conversation moved on, but the topic stuck with Naomi. She genuinely had no interest in dating. The idea of being vulnerable with someone new, of trusting again, felt impossible. She was content with her independence. Work continued to flourish. In month 5 post-divorce, Naomi landed her biggest client yet, a proposal to rebrand a boutique hotel chain called Blackwood Hotels. The chain had 15 properties across the country and was known for luxury service but outdated marketing. The contract would be her largest ever, both in scope and payment. The pitch meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning at the flagship Blackwood Hotel downtown. Naomi prepared meticulously, creating a presentation that showcased her understanding of their brand and vision for modernization. She wore a royal blue suit that made her feel confident and powerful. She arrived 30 minutes early, reviewed her notes in the lobby, and was escorted to a top-floor conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The view was breathtaking. "Ms. Rodriguez?" A woman in her 40s entered, extending her hand. "I'm Vanessa, Director of Marketing. Thank you for coming. Mr. Blackwood will join us shortly. He likes to sit in on all major vendor presentations." Naomi's heart sank slightly. She'd assumed she'd be presenting to the marketing team, not the CEO. But she'd prepared well. She could handle this. When Julian Blackwood entered 5 minutes later, Naomi's first thought was that he looked nothing like what she'd expected. Most hotel chain CEOs were older men in their 60s. Julian looked to be in his late 30s, tall with dark hair and an easy smile. He wore a charcoal suit without a tie, somehow managing to look both professional and approachable. "Ms. Rodriguez, I've heard excellent things about your work." He shook her hand firmly. "I'm looking forward to your presentation." Naomi launched into her pitch, walking them through her analysis of their current brand position, market research on their target demographic, and proposals for repositioning their marketing strategy. She showed mock-ups of updated website designs, social media strategies, and advertising campaigns. She'd spent weeks on this presentation and it showed. Julian asked intelligent questions throughout, clearly engaged and knowledgeable about his business. Vanessa took notes and nodded along. By the end of the hour, Naomi felt confident she'd done well. "That was impressive," Julian said when she finished. "You've clearly done your homework. Vanessa, what do you think?" "I think we'd be foolish not to work with her. This is exactly the fresh perspective we need." Julian nodded, then looked directly at Naomi. "I agree. Ms. Rodriguez, we'd like to hire you. Can you start next week?" "Absolutely." Naomi tried to keep her voice professional despite wanting to dance around the room. They spent another 30 minutes discussing contract details, timeline, and logistics. Julian walked her out personally, continuing to ask questions about her approach and philosophy. "You mentioned you started your business 3 years ago," he said as they waited for the elevator. "What made you take that leap?" "I realized I was good at something and wanted to see how far I could take it," Naomi answered, which was true even if incomplete. The elevator arrived and Julian held the door. "Well, I'm glad you did. I think this partnership is going to be beneficial for both of us." As Naomi rode down to the lobby, contract signed and start date set, she allowed herself a moment of pure joy. 6 months ago she'd been on a hotel room floor, bruised and scared. Now she was landing 6-figure contracts and building a business she was proud of. She called Simone from the car. "I got it. The Blackwood contract." Simone screamed so loud Naomi had to pull the phone away from her ear. "Are you serious? That's huge. Celebration dinner tonight, my treat." That evening, surrounded by friends who'd supported her through the divorce, Naomi felt something she hadn't felt in years: genuine happiness. Not the performance of happiness she'd maintained during her marriage, but real contentment with her life. "Speech," Jordan called out, raising her glass. "Oh no," Naomi laughed. "Speech," the others echoed. Naomi stood, glass in hand. "Okay, fine. 6 months ago I thought my life was over. Instead it was just beginning. Thank you all for reminding me who I am and supporting me while I figured it out. Here's to new chapters and knowing our worth." They cheered and clinked glasses, and Naomi sat down feeling lighter than she had in years. Later that night, alone in her apartment, she thought about the day. The successful pitch, the new client, the celebration with friends. She thought about Trevor, probably arguing with Bethany about money or household chores, stuck in the same patterns that had poisoned their marriage. And she thought about herself, free and building something real. Her phone buzzed. An email from Vanessa with the project timeline and first assignment. Naomi smiled and opened her laptop. She had work to do. The Blackwood Hotels project consumed Naomi's next 2 months. She worked closely with Vanessa's marketing team, diving deep into brand analysis, customer surveys, and competitor research. The work was intense but energizing. Every day brought new challenges and creative problems to solve. Julian Blackwood proved to be a hands-on CEO. He attended weekly update meetings, asked thoughtful questions, and genuinely seemed to value input from everyone on the team. Naomi appreciated his leadership style. He was nothing like Trevor, who needed to be the smartest person in every room. Julian listened more than he talked and gave credit generously. During their 4th weekly meeting, Julian asked Naomi to stay after everyone else left. "I wanted to thank you personally," he said, pulling up a chair beside her rather than staying behind his desk. "The preliminary results from the website redesign are excellent. Traffic is up 30%. "That's just the beginning," Naomi replied, pulling up her tablet to show him the next phase. "Once we implement the social media strategy and update the print materials, you'll see even bigger improvements." They spent an hour going through her plans, Julian's enthusiasm matching her own. At one point he laughed at something she said, and Naomi realized she'd never heard him laugh before. It was a genuine sound, warm and unguarded. "You really love this work," he observed. "I do. There's something satisfying about taking a brand that's lost its way and helping it find itself again." Is that how you see Blackwood Hotels? Lost. Not lost. Just stuck in the past. You have a beautiful product. The hotels are gorgeous, the service is impeccable, but your marketing doesn't reflect that. It's like having a sports car and only driving it in the slow lane. Julian grinned. I've never heard our business described quite that way, but you're right. My father built this company and he was brilliant at hospitality. But marketing was never his strength. When I took over 2 years ago, I knew we needed to modernize. It was the most personal information Julian had shared. Naomi found herself curious about him, which surprised her. She'd been so focused on avoiding any workplace complications that she hadn't really thought about Julian as a person. Your father must be proud of what you're doing, she said. Something shifted in Julian's expression. He passed away 3 years ago. He never got to see what the company could become. I'm sorry. Thank you. He would have liked you, I think. He respected people who spoke their minds and backed it up with results. Julian checked his watch. I should let you go. I'm sure you have other clients to attend to. Actually, Naomi had restructured her business to focus almost exclusively on the Blackwood project, bringing in a junior consultant to handle her smaller clients. But she didn't mention that. Instead, she gathered her things and headed home, oddly reluctant to leave. Over the following weeks, Naomi's interactions with Julian increased. He'd stop by her temporary office in the hotel to check on progress, sometimes bringing coffee. They'd end up talking about the project but also about other things. Books they'd read, places they'd traveled, their philosophies on business and life. Naomi told herself it was just professional rapport. Julian was easy to talk to, intelligent and respectful of her work. That was all. She absolutely wasn't noticing the way his eyes lit up when he talked about renovating the hotels, or how he always remembered her coffee order, or the fact that he treated everyone from housekeeping staff to executives with equal respect. She definitely wasn't attracted to him. That would be ridiculous. She'd barely been divorced for half a year. She wasn't ready for anything like that. You talk about him a lot, Simone observed one evening over dinner. Who? Julian Blackwood. You've mentioned him at least 5 times tonight. Naomi frowned. Have I? It's just because we're working together closely. Big project. Simone gave her a knowing look but dropped the subject. The truth was, Naomi did think about Julian more than she probably should. Not in a romantic way, she told herself. She just appreciated working with someone who valued her expertise. After years of Trevor undermining her accomplishments, Julian's genuine respect for her abilities felt refreshing. One evening as she was packing up to leave the hotel around 7, Julian knocked on her office door. Working late again? He asked. Could say the same about you. Hazard of the job. Have you eaten dinner? Naomi shook her head. Me neither. There's an excellent restaurant on the ground floor. Would you like to join me? We could discuss the Q4 rollout strategy. It was a reasonable request. A working dinner. Nothing unusual about that. Sure. That would be helpful. They took a table in the corner of the hotel restaurant, a sophisticated space with dim lighting and live piano music. Naomi ordered salmon and a salad. Julian chose steak. They started discussing work, but the conversation gradually drifted to other topics. Can I ask you something? Julian said over dessert. It's personal, so feel free to tell me to mind my own business. Naomi tensed slightly but nodded. You mentioned once that you started your business because you realized you were good at something and wanted to see how far you could take it. But I sense there's more to the story. Naomi considered her answer carefully. She hadn't told anyone at Blackwood Hotels about her divorce. It wasn't relevant to her work. But something about Julian's genuine curiosity made her want to be honest. I got divorced about 6 months before I started working with you, she said. The business had actually been going for 3 years by then, but the divorce gave me clarity about what I wanted my life to look like. I realized I'd been playing small, trying not to outshine my ex-husband. After I left him, I stopped limiting myself. Julian nodded slowly. I understand that. After my father died, I realized I'd been running the company the way he would have wanted, not the way I thought was best. It took time to find my own vision. And now I'm building something I'm proud of. Something that honors his legacy but moves forward. He met her eyes. I imagine that's similar to how you feel about your business. It was. Naomi hadn't articulated it quite that way before, but Julian had captured it perfectly. She was honoring her past while building her future. They talked until the restaurant began closing, surprised to realize 3 hours had passed. As they walked to the parking garage together, Naomi felt something she hadn't felt since before her marriage. a genuine connection with someone who saw her as an equal. "Thank you for dinner," she said at her car. "And for the conversation. Thank you for sharing. And for the excellent work you're doing for Blackwood." Julian hesitated, then added, "I hope we can do this again sometime." The conversation part, I mean. Not just work talk. Naomi should have said no. Should have maintained professional boundaries. Instead, she heard herself say, "I'd like that." As she drove home, she tried to analyze her feelings. Julian was handsome, successful, and kind. But more than that, he treated her like a person worth knowing. Not just a consultant he'd hired, but someone whose thoughts and experiences had value. It wasn't attraction, Naomi told herself firmly. It was appreciation. And there was nothing wrong with appreciating a colleague. Even if that appreciation sometimes felt like something more. The following months brought a subtle shift in Naomi and Julian's relationship. They continued their weekly project meetings, but now they also had occasional dinners, coffee conversations that stretched past their scheduled times, and text exchanges about everything from hotel designs to random articles they'd read. Naomi was careful to maintain professional boundaries. She never flirted, never suggested anything beyond friendship, and always kept conversation topics safe. Julian seemed equally cautious, respecting her space while making it clear he enjoyed her company. Their friendship developed naturally like ice melting in spring. Slow, inevitable, and somehow right. "He's perfect for you," Simone declared during one of their monthly dinners. The group had grown, now including 6 successful women who'd become Naomi's closest friends. "We're just friends," Naomi insisted. "Girl, please. The man brings you coffee every morning and remembers how you take it. He asks your opinion on business decisions. He literally lights up when you walk in the room." "You're exaggerating." Jordan jumped in. "Actually, I saw you two at the hotel last week when I was catering an event." "Simone's right. That man is interested." Naomi felt her face heat. "Even if that were true, which I'm not saying it is, I'm not ready for a relationship. The divorce has only been final for 8 months. So what's the magic number? A year? 2 years? 10? Simone's voice was gentle. "I'm not saying you should jump into anything. But don't let Trevor steal your future along with your past. If Julian makes you happy, that's allowed." The words settled in Naomi's chest, uncomfortable but true. She'd been so focused on proving she didn't need a man, on being independent and self-sufficient, that she hadn't considered whether she might want one. Not to complete her or fix her or define her, but simply to share her life with. The thought terrified her. At their next coffee meeting, Julian seemed distracted. They'd met to review the Q1 results from the rebranding campaign, which were excellent. Website traffic was up 60%, booking rates had increased, and customer satisfaction scores had improved across all properties. "This is everything we hoped for," Julian said, reviewing the data. "You've exceeded every expectation." "The team did great work," Naomi deflected, though she was proud of the results. "The team executed your vision." Julian closed his laptop and looked at her directly. "Can I be honest with you about something?" Naomi's heart rate picked up. "Of course. Our contract is up for renewal next month. Vanessa will send over the paperwork, and I absolutely want to continue working together. But I need to tell you something first." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "These past 6 months have been some of the best of my professional life. And it's not just because the project has been successful. It's because I genuinely enjoy working with you, talking with you, learning from you." "I've enjoyed it too," Naomi said quietly. "Good. That's good." Julian looked relieved. "Because I'd like to propose something different for the next phase. Instead of a consultant relationship, I'd like to offer you a position as Vice President of Brand Strategy. Full-time with a substantial salary increase and benefits. You'd have complete creative control over Blackwood's marketing direction." Naomi's mind reeled. It was an incredible offer, the kind of position people spent decades working toward. But it also meant changing her entire business model, giving up her independence, becoming an employee rather than her own boss. "That's very generous," she began. "Before you answer, let me finish. I know you value your independence. You've built something you're proud of, and you should be. So here's what I'm proposing. You keep your consulting business. This role would be part-time, maybe 30 hours a week with a flexible schedule. You'd still have time for other clients if you want them. And if it doesn't work out, no hard feelings. We'll go back to a consulting relationship." It was as if Julian had read her mind and addressed every concern before she could voice it. The offer was perfect. Almost too perfect. "Can I think about it?" Naomi asked. "Take all the time you need. The offer stands regardless of your decision." That night, Naomi made a pros and cons list. On paper, the decision was obvious. The salary was triple what she made annually from all her clients combined. The position would establish her as a leader in hospitality marketing. The flexible schedule meant she wouldn't sacrifice her business. But it also meant seeing Julian every day, working more closely with him. And Naomi was starting to realize that her feelings for him had evolved past professional respect into something she wasn't ready to name. She called Dr. Williams the next morning. "I think I'm scared of being happy," Naomi admitted during their session. "This job offer is perfect. Julian is kind and respectful and treats me as an equal. But I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for him to turn into Trevor." "That's a normal fear after what you experienced," Dr. Williams said. "But Julian isn't Trevor. He's demonstrated that consistently for 6 months. The question is, are you ready to trust again?" Naomi didn't have an answer. Over the next week, she watched Julian carefully, looking for red flags. He remained consistently kind to everyone from executives to housekeeping staff. He asked for input rather than demanding compliance. He gave credit freely and took responsibility for problems. He respected boundaries and never made anyone feel small. He was, in every way that mattered, Trevor's opposite. On Friday, Naomi walked into Julian's office with her decision. "I'd like to accept your offer," she said. "With one condition." "Name it." "If at any point my role becomes problematic for either of us, we agree to address it honestly and professionally. No games, no politics. Just direct communication." Julian extended his hand. "Deal. When can you start?" "I'll need 2 weeks to transition my other clients." "Is that okay?" "Perfect. Welcome to Blackwood Hotels, Naomi." They shook hands and Naomi felt the rightness of the decision settle into her bones. This was her future. Professional success, creative fulfillment, and yes, more time with Julian. She was allowed to want that. Her first official day as VP of Brand Strategy came with an office of her own, a team of 5 marketers reporting to her, and a budget that made her previous consulting contracts look tiny. Naomi dove into the work with enthusiasm, developing strategies for the next 3 years of growth. She and Julian fell into an easy routine. Coffee meetings 3 times a week where they discussed both business and personal topics. Lunch in the hotel restaurant when their schedules aligned. Occasional after-work dinners that sometimes felt like dates but neither of them acknowledged as such. "You're courting each other," Simone observed one evening. "You just won't admit it." Maybe they were. Naomi no longer denied the attraction. Julian made her laugh, challenged her thinking, and treated her with consistent respect. When she had a bad day, he noticed. When she celebrated a win, he was genuinely happy for her. He asked about her family, remembered her mother's birthday, and sent flowers when her grandmother passed away. But neither of them made the first move toward something more. The friendship felt precious and fragile, and neither wanted to risk breaking it. 8 months into her new role, the Blackwood Hotel's annual gala approached. It was a major event where the company celebrated the year's successes and unveiled plans for the future. As VP of Brand Strategy, Naomi was expected to give a presentation on the rebranding results. "You'll need a date," Vanessa mentioned casually during a planning meeting. "All the executives bring someone." Naomi's first instinct was to go alone, but Simone had other ideas. "Ask Julian," she said firmly when Naomi mentioned it. "He's my boss. He's your friend who clearly wants to be more. Ask him." So Naomi did, framing it as 2 colleagues attending a work function together. Julian's face lit up when she asked. "I was hoping you'd want to go together," he admitted. "I've already had 3 people ask if I was bringing anyone, and the only person I wanted to bring was you." The night of the gala, Naomi wore a floor-length green gown that made her feel like royalty. When Julian picked her up from her apartment, the look on his face was worth every penny the dress had cost. "You look stunning," he said simply. "You clean up pretty well yourself." The gala was magical. Naomi's presentation was well received, the food was excellent, and dancing with Julian felt like floating. They moved well together, his hand respectful on her back, their conversation flowing easily. "Thank you for coming with me," Julian said as they swayed to a slow song. "Thank you for asking. Naomi, I need to tell you something." Julian's voice was serious. "And you can pretend I never said it if you want. But I've been thinking about this for months and I can't keep it to myself anymore." Naomi's heart pounded. "Okay. I have feelings for you. Real feelings, not just professional respect or friendship. I think about you constantly. I look forward to seeing you every day. And I know the timing might not be right and I know we work together, but I couldn't let tonight end without telling you how I feel. Naomi looked up at him, at this man who'd proven his character through consistent action, who'd never once made her feel less than, who'd become her friend before asking for anything more. The timing is terrible, she said, and watched his face fall. But that doesn't change how I feel. I have feelings for you too, Julian. I've been trying to ignore them, but I can't anymore. His smile was sunrise breaking through clouds. So what do we do about it? We take it slow. Really slow. I need time to trust this, to trust myself. But yes, I'd like to see where this goes. Slow works for me. As long as it's going somewhere. They stayed on the dance floor until the gala ended, talking and laughing and occasionally just being quiet together. When Julian dropped Naomi at her apartment, he walked her to the door but didn't try to kiss her. Good night, Naomi. Thank you for an incredible evening. Good night, Julian. As she got ready for bed, Naomi caught sight of herself in the mirror. She looked happy. Actually, genuinely happy. Not the performance she'd maintained during her marriage, but real joy radiating from within. She thought about Trevor briefly, wondered if he ever felt this kind of contentment with Bethany. Then she dismissed the thought. Trevor's life was no longer her concern. She had her own life to live. And for the first time in years she was excited about where it was going. The morning after the gala, Naomi woke to a text from Julian. Coffee this morning? Just as friends who've acknowledged they like each other as more than friends. She smiled at her phone. Friends who've acknowledged they like each other as more than friends was possibly the most Julian way to describe their situation. Coffee sounds good, she replied. They met at a cafe near the hotel, not their usual corporate meeting spot. It felt significant, this small change in routine. Julian was already there when Naomi arrived, 2 coffees on the table. I couldn't remember if slow means I shouldn't buy you coffee anymore, he said with a self-deprecating smile. Slow means we don't rush into anything physical or make big declarations. Coffee is fine. Appreciate it, actually. Naomi sat across from him, suddenly nervous. This is weird, right? We're being weird. Completely weird. But also kind of nice. Julian relaxed visibly. I've never done this before. Met someone I worked with and had feelings for them, me neither. Well, I met Trevor in high school, so work wasn't a factor. And honestly, I'm not sure I ever felt like this with him. The admission surprised Naomi even as she said it. Like what? Excited? Say, like myself. She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. With Trevor, I spent so much energy being what he wanted me to be. With you, I can just exist. Julian reached across the table and touched her hand gently. That's how it should be. You should never have to perform for someone who loves you. The word love hung in the air between them, too big and too soon, but somehow right anyway. They spent 2 hours at that cafe talking through what this shift meant for them. They agreed to keep their relationship private at work for now, not out of shame but to protect what was developing between them. They'd continue taking things slowly, dating properly while maintaining their professional relationship. I have a confession, Julian said as they prepared to leave. I've wanted to ask you on a real date for months. Now that I can, I'm nervous about it. Why nervous? Because it matters. You matter. He stood and offered his hand to help her up, a gesture of old-fashioned courtesy that made Naomi's heart flutter. So, Naomi Rodriguez, would you have dinner with me tomorrow night? Not a work dinner, not a friend dinner, but an actual date. Yes, I would like that very much. Their first official date was at a small Italian restaurant Julian had mentioned loving. He picked her up at 7, and Naomi wore a red dress that made her feel confident without trying too hard. Julian's face when he saw her confirmed it was the right choice. Dinner was easy and comfortable, their conversation flowing as naturally as it always did. They talked about books, travel dreams, childhood memories, and everything except work. Julian asked about Naomi's family, listening intently as she described her mother's strength and her grandmother's wisdom. She sounds like she was an amazing woman, Julian said. She was. She always told me to know my worth and never settle for less than I deserved. I wish I'd listened sooner. You listen when you were ready. That's what matters. After dinner, they walked through the downtown park, the city lights reflecting on the lake. It was early November, cool but not cold, the kind of night that invited closeness. Can I hold your hand? Julian asked. The fact that he asked, that he didn't assume, made Naomi's answer easy. Yes. His hand was warm and solid in hers. They walked in comfortable silence for a while, just being together. I'm scared, Naomi admitted suddenly. Of trusting again. But I'm also happy, which scares me even more. Why does happiness scare you? Because it can be taken away. Because I had it before and it turned out to be a lie. Julian stopped walking and turned to face her. What you had with Trevor wasn't happiness. It was survival. You were performing, remember? This is different. You're allowed to be happy, Naomi. You're allowed to trust that someone sees your value and won't abuse it. Tears pricked Naomi's eyes. How are you so understanding about this? Because I watched my mother go through something similar with her second husband. She was terrified to trust again after my father died. But she did, and she found genuine happiness. It taught me that real love is patient. It waits, it respects, it doesn't demand. They resumed walking, hands still clasped. When Julian dropped Naomi at her apartment later, he walked her to the door but again didn't try to kiss her. Thank you for tonight, he said. For trusting me enough to try this. Thank you for being patient with me. Always. Over the next 3 months they dated properly. Dinners, movies, concerts, walks in the park. Julian met Simone and the rest of Naomi's friend group, fitting in seamlessly with their dynamic. Naomi met Julian's sister, a corporate lawyer who grilled her thoroughly before declaring approval. He's been alone too long, Clarissa told Naomi over lunch. Since Dad died, Jules has poured everything into the business. It's good to see him making space for someone. Their relationship deepened naturally, like roots growing underground. They learned each other's quirks and habits. Naomi discovered Julian was terrible at cooking but excellent at cleaning. Julian learned Naomi needed morning quiet before she was ready to talk. They navigated disagreements with respect, neither trying to win but both seeking understanding. And slowly, Naomi's fear began to fade. She started believing this was real, that Julian's consistency wasn't a performance but his actual character. 4 months into dating, during a weekend trip to a bed and breakfast in the countryside, Naomi finally felt ready for more. They'd been lying in bed, fully clothed, just talking and laughing about something silly. Julian? Oh, I love you. He rolled to face her, his expression serious and tender. I love you too. I have for a while now. I know. I could feel it. I just needed time to believe it. Take all the time you need. I'm not going anywhere. They kissed, then really kissed for the first time. It was sweet and gentle and perfect, the kind of kiss that promised more without demanding it. That weekend marked a shift. They were still taking things slowly by most standards, but there was a certainty now, a foundation of trust that allowed them to be vulnerable with each other. Back at work, they maintained professionalism, but their colleagues weren't blind. Vanessa pulled Naomi aside one afternoon. You and Julian, she said without preamble. It's serious? Naomi considered denying it but saw no judgment in Vanessa's eyes. Yes, it is. Good. He deserves happiness. So do you. Vanessa smiled. For what it's worth, I've never seen him like this. You're good for him. The validation meant more than Naomi expected. She'd worried about how their relationship would be perceived at work, but the Blackwood Hotel's culture was healthy enough that people seemed genuinely happy for them. 8 months into dating, during a quiet dinner at Julian's house, he asked the question that changed everything. Move in with me. Naomi looked up from her pasta, surprised. What? Move in with me. Not because we have to or because it makes financial sense, but because I wake up every morning wishing you were there. Because I want to share my space and my life with you fully. Because I love you and I want to build a future together. He paused. But if it's too soon, I understand. Naomi thought about it. Her apartment was hers, the first space she'd ever had that was completely her own. Moving in with Julian meant giving up that independence or at least sharing it. But it also meant mornings together, coming home to someone who valued her, building a shared life with a partner who respected her autonomy. Yes, she heard herself say. Let's do it. The move happened gradually over 6 weeks. Naomi didn't give up her apartment right away, subletting it instead as a safety net her therapist approved of. She moved her things into Julian's house piece by piece, making sure her presence was felt in the space. Julian encouraged her to change anything she wanted. They repainted the guest room to serve as her home office. She added plants throughout the house. He built shelves for her book collection. It became their space, not his space that she occupied. Living together revealed new layers of compatibility. They developed morning routines and evening rituals. They learned to navigate each other's moods and needs. They had their first real argument about loading the dishwasher and laughed about it afterward because it was so mundane and normal. This is what I wanted, Naomi told Dr. Williams during a session. Partnership. Equality. Someone who sees me as a whole person. And how does it feel? Terrifying and wonderful. I keep waiting for it to fall apart, but it doesn't. Julian just keeps showing up and being exactly who he says he is. That's called consistency. It's what healthy relationships are built on. 1 year into their relationship, Naomi finally closed the door on her old life completely. Her divorce from Trevor had been final for 18 months. She'd built a career she was proud of, found love she'd never imagined possible, and become the person she was always meant to be. On the anniversary of their first date, Julian took Naomi back to the Italian restaurant where it had all begun. "I have something to ask you," he said over dessert. Naomi's heart raced. She thought she knew what was coming, but she'd been wrong before. Julian pulled out a small box and opened it, revealing a stunning ring with a deep green stone surrounded by diamonds. "Naomi Rodriguez, you walked into my hotel conference room and changed my entire world. You've made me laugh, challenged me to be better, and shown me what real partnership looks like. I love you more than I thought possible. Will you marry me?" Naomi looked at this man who'd proven himself again and again, who'd earned her trust through consistent action, who'd never once made her feel less than cherished. "Yes. Absolutely yes." The restaurant erupted in applause from nearby diners who'd been watching. Julian slipped the ring on her finger and it fit perfectly, just like everything else about them. As they left the restaurant, engaged and giddy, Naomi thought briefly about Trevor. About the life she'd left behind and the woman she'd been then. That Naomi had thought happiness meant sacrifice, that love required making yourself smaller. This Naomi knew better. She'd learned that real love expanded you, made space for growth, celebrated your successes instead of competing with them. She'd learned she deserved to be cherished. And she'd found someone who cherished her exactly as she was. The engagement brought a joy Naomi hadn't expected. She'd been married before, gone through all the traditional steps, and thought she knew what this stage felt like. But planning a wedding with Julian was completely different from the experience with Trevor. Trevor had opinions about everything. The venue had to be prestigious, the guest list needed to impress his colleagues, Naomi's dress should be traditional and modest. She'd gone along with it all, convincing herself that compromising meant being a good partner. Julian's approach was the opposite. "It's your day as much as mine. What do you want?" he'd asked when they started planning. "I want something that feels like us. Small maybe. Intimate. Then that's what we'll have." They decided on a 6-month engagement. Both agreed there was no reason to wait. They chose a venue in the gardens of one of the Blackwood Hotel's properties, a beautiful outdoor space with a view of the lake. Naomi's friend Jordan would cater. The guest list topped out at 75 people. Close friends, family, and a few work colleagues they genuinely cared about. The news of their engagement spread quickly through both their personal and professional circles. Vanessa organized a surprise celebration at the hotel with the marketing team. Simone threw Naomi an engagement party that turned into a joyful gathering of all the women who'd supported her through her divorce and beyond. "I knew it," Simone said, hugging Naomi tight. "I knew you two were perfect for each other." "You did call it pretty early," Naomi admitted. "Because you light up around him. And he looks at you like you hung the moon." Naomi's mother flew in from Atlanta to meet Julian properly. They'd video chatted several times, but this was different. Naomi was nervous about the meeting, knowing her mother's protective instincts had gone into overdrive after what happened with Trevor. "Mama, please be nice," Naomi pleaded the morning of their lunch. "I'm always nice. I just want to make sure he knows how precious you are." The lunch went better than Naomi hoped. Her mother asked Julian direct questions about his intentions, his views on marriage, his understanding of commitment. Julian answered honestly, sharing his own parents' love story and how it shaped his beliefs about partnership. "My father adored my mother," he told her. "Even after 30 years of marriage, he brought her coffee in bed every morning. He said that love wasn't just a feeling but a choice you made every day. That's what I want with Naomi. To choose her every day in big ways and small." Naomi's mother got tears in her eyes. Later, as Julian excused himself to take a work call, she grabbed Naomi's hand. "He's nothing like Trevor. Nothing. This one sees you, baby. Really sees you." "I know, Mama. That's why I said yes." As the wedding approached, Naomi couldn't help comparing her two engagement experiences. With Trevor, she'd felt anxious and pressured, constantly trying to please everyone else. With Julian, she felt excited and supported, making choices that reflected their values. She chose a dress in deep maroon instead of traditional white, something that made her feel powerful and beautiful. Julian selected a suit in charcoal gray. They wrote their own vows, wanting their words to reflect their actual relationship. 3 months before the wedding, something unexpected happened. Naomi was at lunch with Simone when she spotted a familiar face across the restaurant. Bethany, looking tired and significantly less polished than Naomi remembered. Their eyes met for a brief moment before Bethany quickly looked away. Was that her? Simone asked quietly. Yes. Do you want to leave? Naomi considered it, then shook her head. No. She doesn't get to take up space in my life anymore. She's just someone I used to know. Barely. They finished their lunch, and Naomi didn't look in Bethany's direction again. Later, she mentioned the encounter to Julian. How did it feel seeing her? He asked. Nothing. I felt nothing. No anger, no pain, just nothing. She's irrelevant to my life now. That's a good place to be. It was. Naomi realized she truly moved on from that chapter. Trevor and Bethany were characters in a story she'd finished writing. Her focus was on the life she was building, not the one she'd left behind. The wedding planning continued smoothly. They selected a menu featuring both their favorite foods. The music would include everything from jazz to R&B to classic rock. They chose flowers in vibrant colors, deep reds, rich purples, bright oranges. Nothing subtle or understated. This looks like us, Julian said, reviewing the mood board their wedding planner had created. Bold and colorful and alive. 1 month before the wedding, during a dress fitting, Naomi received an unexpected call from a number she didn't recognize. She answered, thinking it might be a vendor. Naomi? It's Trevor. She almost dropped the phone. How did you get this number? I still know some of your friends. Listen, I need to talk to you. Can we meet somewhere? No. We have nothing to discuss. Please. Just give me 5 minutes. It's important. Every instinct told Naomi to hang up. She'd blocked Trevor's old number after the divorce. The fact that he'd tracked down her new one felt invasive. But curiosity got the better of her. You have 2 minutes? Talk. I heard you're getting married. To Julian Blackwood. The hotel guy. Yes. And? Trevor's voice cracked. I made a mistake, Naomi. The biggest mistake of my life. Bethany and I broke up months ago. She was using me the whole time. And I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me for someone who didn't care about me at all. Naomi waited, saying nothing. I know I hurt you. I know what I did was unforgivable. But I still love you. I never stopped. Please, can we at least talk in person? Maybe we could get coffee, discuss whether there's any chance you'd reconsider. Reconsider what, exactly? Giving me another chance. I've changed, Naomi. I've been in therapy. I understand what I did wrong. I could be the husband you deserved. For a moment, Naomi was transported back to that living room, the shock of Trevor's hand on her face, the humiliation of being kicked out of her own home. She thought about the months of rebuilding herself, of learning her worth, of finding genuine love. Trevor, I need you to understand something. What we had wasn't love. It was control. You needed someone to make you feel important, and I was convenient. When I started succeeding, you couldn't handle it. That's why Bethany was attractive to you. She seemed like she needed you. That's not true. I loved you. No, you didn't. You loved the version of me that stayed small so you could feel big. The real me, the one who built a business and found her voice, that person threatened you. I can change. I have changed. Maybe you have. But it doesn't matter anymore. I don't love you, Trevor. I don't even think about you most days. You're part of my past, and that's where you'll stay. You're really going to marry him? This rich guy you barely know. I know Julian better than I ever knew you. He sees me, respects me, celebrates my success instead of competing with it. He's everything you weren't. Naomi's voice was calm and firm. Don't call this number again. Move on with your life like I've moved on with mine. She hung up before he could respond and immediately blocked the number. Her hands were shaking, but not from fear or uncertainty. From anger that Trevor thought he could waltz back into her life and make demands. Everything okay? The seamstress asked, noticing Naomi's expression. Everything's perfect. Let's finish this fitting. I have a wedding to prepare for. That evening, Naomi told Julian about the call. He listened without interrupting, his face carefully neutral. How do you feel about it? He asked when she finished. Angry that he thought he had the right to ask. But also relieved in a weird way. It confirmed every reason I left him. The audacity to call me a month before my wedding and suggest I cancel it for him? That's exactly who he always was. Julian pulled her close. You handled it perfectly. And for the record, I'm grateful every day that Trevor was too stupid to appreciate what he had. His loss is my gain. Naomi laughed and kissed him. That's probably the most competitive thing I've ever heard you say. What can I say? When it comes to you, I'm not above a little smugness. The final month before the wedding flew by in a blur of last-minute details and excited anticipation. Naomi's mother came back to help with final preparations. Julian's sister Clarissa organized a joint bachelor/bachelorette celebration that somehow involved both karaoke and go-karts. 1 week before the wedding, during their final dress rehearsal, Naomi stood in the garden where they'd exchange vows. The space had been transformed with flowers and lights, creating a magical atmosphere. Julian stood beside her, and the officiant, one of Julian's college professors, walked them through the ceremony flow. "This is really happening," Naomi whispered to Julian during a break. "Having second thoughts?" "Not even for a second. I'm just happy. Genuinely, completely happy." "Me too." Julian squeezed her hand. "1 more week and you'll be Naomi Blackwood." "Actually, I'm keeping Rodriguez professionally. Naomi Blackwood Rodriguez personally." "Even better. More of you to love." The night before the wedding, Naomi stayed with Simone per tradition. They sat on the balcony of Simone's apartment, drinking wine and talking about the journey that had brought Naomi to this moment. 2 years ago you were on a hotel room floor, bruised and scared. "Look at you now," Simone said. "I almost can't believe it myself sometimes. It feels like a different lifetime." "It was a different you. You've grown so much." "I had to. Staying the person I was would have meant staying in that situation. And now you're marrying a man who actually deserves you." Naomi raised her glass. "To new beginnings and knowing our worth." "To new beginnings," Simone echoed. As Naomi lay in Simone's guest room that night, unable to sleep from excitement, she thought about everything that had led to this moment. The pain, the growth, the unexpected love. She thought about Trevor's call and how unmoved she'd been by his pleas. She'd learned the difference between love and control, between partnership and performance, between being with someone because you were afraid to be alone and choosing someone because they enhanced your already full life. Tomorrow she would marry Julian Blackwood. Not because she needed him but because she wanted him. Not because he completed her but because he complemented her. Not to fix something broken but to build something beautiful. And that made all the difference. The morning of Naomi's wedding dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect spring day that felt like a gift. She woke in Simone's guest room to her phone buzzing with well wishes from friends and family. Her mother arrived at 8 with breakfast and enough energy to power a small city. "Today's the day, baby," her mother said, pulling Naomi into a tight hug. "My daughter is marrying a good man. Finally." The dig at Trevor was obvious, but Naomi let it slide. Her mother had earned the right to her opinions after witnessing Naomi's pain. The bridal suite at the Blackwood Hotel was transformed into a preparation space. Simone and the rest of Naomi's friend group arrived with champagne, though Naomi only took a small sip. She wanted to be fully present for every moment. Jordan arrived with a beautiful brunch spread. "Can't get married on an empty stomach," she declared, setting up an impressive array of pastries, fruit and savory dishes. While everyone ate and chatted, Naomi's stylist worked on her hair, creating an elegant updo with a few curls framing her face. Her makeup was natural but polished, emphasizing her features without overwhelming them. When she finally stepped into her maroon dress, the room fell silent. "Naomi," Simone breathed, "you're stunning." The dress fit perfectly, hugging her curves in all the right places. The deep maroon color was striking against her skin tone, making her look regal and powerful. She'd chosen emerald earrings that had belonged to her grandmother, something borrowed from her mother, and new shoes in gold. "I feel like myself," Naomi said, studying her reflection. "That's what matters." Across the hotel, Julian was having a similar morning with his groomsmen. His best friend from college, Marcus, whom Julian had known since they were 18, served as his best man. Julian's sister Clarissa, who was officiating, stopped by to check on him. "Nervous?" she asked. "Not even a little. I just want to see Naomi." "You're sure about this? It's not too fast." Julian smiled. "I've never been more sure of anything. Naomi is the person I want to build my life with. Simple as that." At 3 o'clock, guests began arriving at the garden ceremony space. 75 people who genuinely cared about Julian and Naomi, no one invited for appearances or social obligation. The chairs were arranged in a semicircle around a small platform decorated with flowers in vibrant colors: reds, purples, oranges, and deep pinks. A string quartet played as guests found their seats. Vanessa and the Blackwood Hotel's marketing team sat together, genuinely happy for their boss and colleague. Naomi's mother sat in the front row, dabbing her eyes with tissues before the ceremony even started. At 3:30 the music changed. Julian took his position at the altar, his face lit with anticipation. His groomsmen stood beside him in matching gray suits. Clarissa stood at the center, ready to officiate. The bridal party walked down first. Simone, Jordan, and two other close friends, all wearing dresses in different jewel tones that complemented each other without matching. They took their places across from the groomsmen. Then the music shifted to the processional. Everyone stood. Naomi appeared at the end of the garden path, her arm linked with her mother's. She'd chosen to have her mother walk her down the aisle, a decision that felt right for this new chapter. As they walked, Naomi's eyes found Julian's and the rest of the world faded away. Julian's expression when he saw her was everything Naomi could have hoped for. Love, awe, and joy all mixed together. He mouthed "Wow," and she smiled so wide her face hurt. At the altar, Naomi's mother hugged her tight and whispered, "Be happy, baby. You deserve this." Then she placed Naomi's hand in Julian's and took her seat. Clarissa began the ceremony with words about love, partnership, and the journey that had brought Julian and Naomi to this moment. She spoke about how love isn't just a feeling but a choice, an action, a commitment renewed daily. "Julian and Naomi have chosen to write their own vows," Clarissa said. "Julian, would you like to go first?" Julian took both of Naomi's hands in his and took a deep breath. "Naomi, the day you walked into my conference room, I had no idea my life was about to change. You impressed me with your intelligence and vision, but you captivated me with your strength and authenticity. Over the past 2 years, you've taught me what real partnership looks like. You've shown me that love means celebrating each other's success, not competing with it. That commitment means showing up every day in big ways and small. You make me laugh, you challenge me to be better, and you've made space in your life for me without losing any of yourself. I promise to always respect your independence, celebrate your achievements, and stand beside you through whatever comes. I promise to choose you every single day. I love you, Naomi Rodriguez. Thank you for choosing me too." There wasn't a dry eye in the audience. Naomi blinked back tears, not wanting to mess up her makeup, and squeezed Julian's hands. "Naomi?" Clarissa prompted gently. Naomi cleared her throat and began. "Julian, when we met, I was still healing from a relationship that taught me what love isn't. You patiently showed me what love is. You proved through consistent action that respect, kindness, and partnership aren't too much to ask for. They're the foundation. You've never asked me to make myself smaller so you could feel bigger. You've never competed with my success or resented my independence. Instead, you've celebrated every win, supported every challenge, and given me space to become the person I was always meant to be. I promise to build a life with you, not for you. I promise to be your partner in every sense of the word. I promise to love you in the mundane moments and the extraordinary ones. And I promise to always be honest, always be myself, and always choose us. I love you, Julian Blackwood. Thank you for seeing me." Clarissa smiled through her own tears. "By the power vested in me by the state, and witnessed by everyone who loves you, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Julian, you may kiss your bride." Julian cupped Naomi's face gently and kissed her as the audience erupted in applause. It was a kiss that promised everything, celebrated everything, and marked the beginning of their forever. They walked back down the aisle together, husband and wife, to cheers and well wishes. The reception was set up on the hotel's main terrace overlooking the lake. Cocktail hour featured heavy hors d'oeuvres from Jordan's catering company and a signature cocktail created specially for the occasion. Dinner was served family style, encouraging conversation and connection. Jordan had outdone herself with a menu that featured both Naomi and Julian's favorite dishes. The wedding cake was a 3-tier masterpiece in burgundy and gold with fresh flowers. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the terrace, it was time for speeches. Marcus stood first, sharing stories about Julian's younger days and how he'd never seen his friend as happy as he'd been since meeting Naomi. Simone followed with a speech that was equal parts funny and touching. "I've known Naomi for 15 years, and I've watched her grow into the incredible woman standing before you. But I've never seen her as radiant as she's been this past year. Julian, you've given my friend something precious, the space to be fully herself. That's the greatest gift you could offer." Julian's sister Clarissa added her own words, welcoming Naomi to the family and promising to embarrass Julian with childhood stories at every opportunity. Finally, Naomi's mother stood, her voice thick with emotion. "When Naomi was little, she asked me how she'd know when she found real love. I told her she'd know because she'd feel like the best version of herself when she was with that person. Julian, thank you for helping my daughter find herself again. Thank you for treating her with the love and respect she's always deserved." First dances followed. Naomi and Julian swayed to a classic R&B love song, lost in their own world. Then Naomi danced with her mother while Julian danced with Clarissa. The dance floor opened up after that and the party truly began. Around 9 o'clock, as Naomi took a break from dancing to catch her breath, she noticed her phone buzzing in her clutch. Several texts from an unknown number. Against her better judgment, she opened them. The messages were from Trevor. Somehow he'd gotten her new number again. "I see you went through with it. Congratulations, I guess. He'll never love you the way I did. You're making a mistake, Naomi. You'll realize it eventually. I'll be here when you do. I'll always wait for you." Naomi felt a flash of anger that Trevor was trying to intrude on this day, on this perfect moment. Then she looked across the terrace at Julian, who was laughing with Marcus and some college friends. She looked at her mother dancing with Simone. At the life she'd built, the people who genuinely loved and supported her. She deleted the messages, blocked the number, and tucked her phone away. Trevor's words had no power here. He was a ghost from a past she'd thoroughly exorcised. "Everything okay?" Julian asked, appearing beside her with 2 glasses of champagne. "Everything's perfect. Dance with me?" They returned to the dance floor and Naomi let herself sink into the moment. Her maroon dress swirled around her, Julian's arms were steady and sure, and she was surrounded by people who celebrated their happiness. At midnight, as the party began winding down, Julian and Naomi cut their cake and prepared to leave for their honeymoon suite. They'd be flying to the Caribbean in the morning for 2 weeks, but tonight they'd stay at the hotel. As they walked through a shower of flower petals, Naomi's last thought before entering the hotel was how far she'd come. From a woman who'd been beaten and belittled to a woman who knew her worth. From a broken marriage to a partnership built on respect and love. She'd thought that night on the hotel room floor 2 years ago was her ending. Instead, it had been her beginning. And this, right here, with Julian's hand in hers and her whole life ahead of her, this was exactly where she was meant to be. The honeymoon in the Caribbean was everything Naomi and Julian needed. 2 weeks of sun, relaxation, and simply being together without the demands of work or daily life. They returned home tanned, rested, and ready to start their married life properly. Moving Julian's belongings into what was now officially their shared home felt different post-wedding. Naomi added more personal touches, and Julian insisted on creating a dedicated space for her business work. They fell into routines that honored both their togetherness and their individual needs. Work at Blackwood Hotels continued smoothly. The rebranding campaign Naomi had spearheaded was showing sustained success, with occupancy rates up across all properties. They'd begun expansion plans for 3 new locations, and Naomi was leading the marketing strategy for each. 3 months into married life, on a Saturday morning in late August, Naomi was working in her home office when the doorbell rang. Julian was at the gym, so she answered it herself, expecting a delivery. Trevor stood on the doorstep. Naomi's first instinct was to slam the door in his face. Instead, she simply stood there, blocking the entrance. "What do you want, Trevor?" He looked terrible. His clothes were wrinkled, his face unshaven, and his eyes were red. "I need to talk to you. Please, just 5 minutes." "No. Leave. Naomi, please. I know I don't deserve it, but I'm begging you. I've lost everything, and you're the only person who ever really understood me. That's not my problem. We've been divorced for 2 years. You need to move on." "I can't. Don't you understand? I made the biggest mistake of my life and I've been paying for it ever since. Bethany left me broke. My job fired me. I'm living in a studio apartment and can barely afford rent." Naomi felt nothing. No sympathy, no satisfaction, just complete indifference. "Again, not my problem. You created this situation." I know I did. But I've changed, Naomi. I've been in therapy for a year. I understand what I did wrong. I could be the husband you deserved if you'd just give me another chance. Trevor, I have a husband. One who actually deserves that title. Him. Trevor's face twisted with bitterness. The rich guy who bought you with fancy dinners and expensive gifts. That's not real love, Naomi. That's just comfort. You don't know anything about my marriage. I know you jumped into it fast. What, a year and a half from divorce to remarriage? That's rebound, not real. Naomi's patience snapped. Let me make something very clear. Julian didn't buy me. He respected me, supported my career, celebrated my success, and treated me like an equal partner. Everything you never did. What we have is more real than anything you and I ever had. That's not fair. I loved you. No, Trevor. You loved controlling me. You loved having someone who made you feel important. The second I started succeeding on my own, you couldn't handle it. That's why you cheated with Bethany. She seemed like she needed you and that fed your ego. Trevor's shoulders slumped. Maybe that's true. But I've learned from it. I could be different now. Even if that's true and I doubt it is, it doesn't matter. I don't love you. I don't want you in my life. I've moved on completely. So that's it? You won't even consider it? After 8 years together, I mean nothing to you? You mean exactly what you showed me I meant to you when you hit me and kicked me out of my own home. When you chose your mistress over your wife. When you made me feel small so you could feel big. A car pulled into the driveway. Julian home from the gym. He got out and immediately assessed the situation, his easy expression shifting to something more protective as he approached. Everything okay here? He asked, positioning himself beside Naomi. Fine. Trevor was just leaving. Trevor looked at Julian with obvious resentment. So this is him. The knight in shining armor. I'm her husband, Julian said calmly. And you're trespassing. I'd suggest you leave before I call the police. I just want to talk to my wife. Ex-wife, Naomi and Julian corrected simultaneously. For 2 years, Naomi added. We've been divorced longer than we've had any contact. You need to accept that and move on with your life. Move on to what? You took everything from me. I took half of what was legally mine. You destroyed your own life through your own choices. Trevor's expression crumbled, tears filling his eyes. Please, Naomi. I'm begging you. I've lost my job, my home, everything. Bethany cleaned me out. I have nothing. I just need help getting back on my feet. A loan maybe. Or a reference for a new job. Something. No. How can you be so cold? After everything we meant to each other? Julian's voice was steel. After you hit her? After you betrayed her trust? After you humiliated her in her own home? You're lucky she's being this civil. I would have called the police already. This doesn't concern you, Trevor snapped. Everything concerning my wife concerns me. Now leave or I'm making that call. Trevor looked between them, seeing no sympathy in either face. His shoulders sagged in defeat. Fine. I'll go. But Naomi, when this falls apart, when you realize what you gave up, don't come crying to me. I won't, Naomi said simply. Goodbye, Trevor. Don't come here again. She closed the door firmly, cutting off whatever response Trevor might have made. Through the window they watched him walk to a beat-up car parked on the street and drive away. Julian turned to Naomi immediately. Are you okay? I'm fine. Actually better than fine. I felt nothing looking at him. No anger, no regret, not even satisfaction at his downfall. Just nothing. That's growth. Julian pulled her into his arms. But I'm still going to call our lawyer and see about getting a restraining order. He shouldn't be showing up here. Agreed. Though I doubt he'll be back. He got the message loud and clear. They spent the rest of the day together, Julian staying close as if to remind Naomi she was safe and valued. But Naomi didn't need the reminder. She'd moved so far past her life with Trevor that his appearance felt like a strange interruption from another dimension, not a threat to her current happiness. That evening, as they made dinner together in their kitchen, Naomi reflected on the encounter. You know what struck me most about seeing Trevor? She said as she chopped vegetables. What's that? How small he looked. Not physically but as a person. I spent 8 years thinking he was so important, that his opinions mattered more than mine, that pleasing him was the most important thing. Seeing him today, I realized he's just a sad, bitter man who blames everyone else for his problems. He made his choices, Julian agreed. And he's living with the consequences. Part of me wonders if I should feel bad for him. He clearly is struggling. Do you want to feel bad for him? Naomi thought about it honestly. No. He had every chance to be different, to treat me better, to be the partner I deserved. He chose not to. And then when I left, he had the opportunity to learn and grow. Instead, he stayed the same and let Bethany treat him the way he treated me. That's karma, not tragedy. Exactly. You don't owe him anything, Naomi. Not sympathy, not help, not even your thoughts. They finished making dinner and ate on their patio watching the sunset. Naomi felt grateful for this life, this partnership, this love that lifted her up instead of tearing her down. Later that night, as they got ready for bed, Julian brought up something that had clearly been on his mind. I want to ask you something and I want you to be completely honest. Always. When Trevor showed up today, was there any part of you that felt pulled back to that life? Any nostalgia or second-guessing? Naomi turned to face him fully. Not even for a second. When I looked at Trevor, I saw everything I don't want. Everything I escaped from. Being with you has shown me what love actually looks like, and it's nothing like what I had with him. Good. Because you're stuck with me. For better or worse, remember? Best decision I ever made. They climbed into bed and Julian pulled Naomi close. Thank you for handling that so well today. You were strong and clear, and you didn't let him manipulate you. I've learned my worth. No one gets to diminish that anymore. Certainly not him. As Naomi drifted off to sleep, she thought about the contrast between her two marriages. With Trevor, she'd spent every day trying to be good enough, trying to earn love that was always conditional. With Julian, she simply existed as herself, and that was not only enough but celebrated. The next morning, their lawyer called to confirm that they could file for a restraining order if Trevor made contact again. Naomi decided to wait, believing Trevor had gotten the message. If he showed up again, they'd take legal action. But she suspected yesterday's rejection had been final enough. She was right. Weeks passed with no contact from Trevor. Life returned to its normal rhythm. Work, friends, evenings at home, weekend adventures. Naomi's consulting business continued to flourish alongside her position at Blackwood Hotels. Julian announced plans to expand the hotel chain internationally. One evening in early October, Naomi came home from a client meeting to find Julian in the living room with champagne and a huge smile. "What's the occasion?" she asked. "You're looking at the CEO of a company that's about to go public. The board approved it today. We'll be on the stock exchange by next spring." Naomi threw her arms around him. "Julian, that's incredible. It means big changes. More scrutiny, more pressure, more travel. Are you ready for that?" "As long as we face it together, I'm ready for anything." They celebrated that evening, toasting to Julian's success and the future they were building. As they sat on their patio under the stars, Naomi felt overwhelmed with gratitude. "What are you thinking about?" Julian asked, noticing her expression. "About how different my life is now. 2 years ago, I was terrified and alone, wondering if I'd ever feel happy again. Now I'm married to my best friend, I have a career I'm proud of, and I wake up every day excited about what's ahead." "You created all of that. I just got to be part of the journey. We created it. Together." Julian raised his glass. "To us. To new beginnings and second chances. To knowing our worth," Naomi added. They clinked glasses under the stars, two people who'd found each other at exactly the right time. Not to fix what was broken but to build something new. And somewhere across town, Trevor was learning to live with the consequences of his choices. But that was his story to write. Naomi's story was here in this moment, with this man, in this life she'd fought so hard to create. And she'd never been happier. 1 year into their marriage, Naomi and Julian sat in their living room reviewing their year together. It had become a tradition they'd started on their first anniversary, looking back at what they'd accomplished, what they'd learned, and what they wanted for the future. "Biggest accomplishment?" Julian asked. "Professionally, expanding the Blackwood brand internationally. Personally, learning that I can be successful and happily married at the same time." Naomi smiled. "Your turn. Taking the company public was huge. But honestly, my biggest accomplishment is building a marriage where we both feel like equals. Where neither of us sacrifices who we are for the relationship." They'd both grown tremendously over the past year. Julian had navigated the company's transition to being publicly traded with skill and grace. Naomi had been promoted to Chief Brand Officer, overseeing marketing for all Blackwood properties globally. They traveled to 5 countries for both business and pleasure, bought a second home near the beach, and deepened their partnership in countless small ways. But the biggest news was what Naomi had learned that morning. "I have something to tell you," she said, unable to contain her smile any longer. Julian set down his wine glass, giving her his full attention. "Good news or bad news?" "Good news. Very good news." Naomi pulled out the pregnancy test she'd hidden in her pocket. "We're having a baby." For a moment, Julian was completely still, processing. Then his face broke into the biggest smile Naomi had ever seen. He pulled her into his arms, laughing and crying at the same time. "A baby. We're having a baby. Are you happy?" Naomi asked, though his reaction made the answer obvious. "Happy doesn't even begin to cover it. When did you find out?" "This morning. I wanted to tell you right away, but I also wanted to wait for the perfect moment. Every moment with you is perfect." Julian placed his hand gently on her stomach. "Hello, little one. Your mom and I can't wait to meet you." They spent the rest of the evening talking about the future. Baby names, nursery designs, parenting philosophies. Julian was already planning to take paternity leave, wanting to be fully present for the first months of their child's life. "This baby is going to be so loved," Naomi said, her hand over Julian's on her stomach. "They're going to grow up seeing what a healthy relationship looks like. what respect and partnership actually mean. They're going to have your intelligence and my sense of humor, which means there'll be trouble. And they're going to know they can be anything they want. That their worth isn't tied to anyone else's validation. It was the lesson Naomi had learned the hard way, but one she was determined to pass on to her child. No one would make her baby feel small. No one would teach them that love required sacrifice of self. Over the following weeks, Naomi began experiencing the joys and challenges of early pregnancy. Morning sickness that lasted all day, exhaustion that hit without warning, but also the profound joy of knowing a life was growing inside her. She told her mother during a video call, and her mother's tears of happiness flowed freely. A grandchild. Oh baby, I'm so happy for you. Simone organized a surprise baby shower at the 3-month mark, gathering all of Naomi's close friends. The celebration was filled with laughter, advice, and genuine excitement for this next chapter. At 5 months pregnant, Naomi had settled into the second trimester's easier phase. Her energy had returned, and she developed a definite baby bump that she wore proudly. She was at her desk at Blackwood Hotels, reviewing marketing campaigns for the new London property, when her assistant buzzed. "There's a delivery for you at reception." "I'll be right there." Naomi walked to the hotel lobby, expecting a package for one of her projects. Instead, she found a large bouquet of flowers. Not the elegant arrangements Julian sometimes sent, but cheap grocery store flowers in a plastic wrap. The card read, "Congratulations on the baby. I heard through friends. You're going to be an amazing mother. I'm sorry for everything. Trevor." Naomi stared at the flowers for a long moment, feeling absolutely nothing. No anger, no sadness, no sympathy for the man who'd tried so hard to remain relevant in her life. Just a vague annoyance that he'd somehow heard about her pregnancy and thought this gesture was appropriate. She handed the flowers to the receptionist. "Please dispose of these. And if this person tries to contact me again or send anything else, notify security immediately. Of course, Ms. Blackwood Rodriguez." Naomi returned to her office and immediately called their lawyer to document the contact. Then she called Julian. "Trevor sent flowers congratulating us on the baby. How did he even know? Mutual friends apparently. Though I can't imagine who would tell him. Either way, I've documented it with our lawyer and informed hotel security. If he tries again, we're getting that restraining order." "Agreed. Are you okay?" "I'm fine. More annoyed than anything else. He just can't accept that he's not part of my life anymore." "Want me to handle it?" "No. I've got it. He's just noise at this point, not a threat." That evening, Naomi did something she'd been avoiding. She Googled Trevor's name, curious about what his life had become. The results were sparse. His social media accounts were private or deleted. His LinkedIn showed he'd had 3 different jobs in the past 2 years, none lasting more than 6 months. There was nothing about Bethany, suggesting they'd truly gone their separate ways. "What are you doing?" Julian asked, looking over her shoulder. "Being nosy. Checking on Trevor's life. And? He seems to be exactly where his choices have led him. Unstable job history, no visible social life, trying desperately to cling to the past instead of building a future. Do you feel bad for him?" Naomi closed her laptop. "No. I feel grateful that's not my life anymore. I feel relieved I got out when I did. And I feel thankful every single day for what we have." Julian kissed the top of her head. "Me too." At 7 months pregnant, Naomi cut back on travel but remained actively involved in all of Blackwood's marketing initiatives. She'd hired an assistant who was learning her role, preparing for when Naomi would take maternity leave. During a quiet evening at home, curled up on the couch with Julian, Naomi felt the baby kick strongly. She grabbed Julian's hand and placed it where the movement was. "Feel that?" "Yes." Julian's eyes widened with wonder. "That's our baby. Actually real and growing and about to be here. We're going to be parents in 2 months. Are you scared?" Naomi considered the question honestly. "A little. But mostly excited. I know what kind of parent I don't want to be, and that's a good starting point." "What kind is that?" "Controlling. Dismissive. Someone who needs their child to make them feel important. I want to raise a child who knows their worth isn't dependent on anyone else's validation. We'll figure it out together. Just like everything else." At 8.5 months pregnant, Naomi received one final communication from Trevor. A letter sent to their home address. Julian found it first and asked if she wanted him to throw it away unread. "No, I'll read it. Might as well see what he has to say." The letter was long and rambling, full of apologies and justifications. Trevor detailed his life's downward spiral after the divorce. Bethany leaving him, job loss after job loss, financial struggles, loneliness. He claimed he'd spent 2 years reflecting on his mistakes and now understood everything he'd done wrong. He wrote about seeing photos of Naomi's wedding on social media, how beautiful she'd looked, how happy. He admitted that seeing her success while his life fell apart had been difficult but ultimately deserved. He claimed he'd finally accepted that they were over, that she'd moved on, and that he needed to do the same. The letter ended with, "I don't expect forgiveness and I'm not asking for a response. I just needed you to know that I understand now what I lost and why I lost it. You deserve better than I gave you. I hope you're truly happy, Naomi. Despite everything, I really do." Naomi read the letter twice, then handed it to Julian. "What do you think?" she asked when he finished. "I think it's a man finally facing consequences and trying to make peace with them. Whether he's genuinely changed or just lonely and regretful, I can't say. Should I respond? Do you want to?" Naomi thought about it carefully. Part of her wanted to write back, to offer some kind of closure for both of them. But another part, the wiser part, knew that any response would give Trevor false hope of continued connection. "No," she decided finally. "This chapter of my life is closed. Responding would just crack it open again and I don't want that. He's made his apology. He can live with whatever peace that brings him." "You're sure?" "Completely sure." Naomi placed her hand on her very pregnant belly. "I have everything I need right here. The past is the past and I'm focused on the future." They burned the letter that evening in their fireplace, watching the paper curl and blacken. It felt symbolic, final, like truly closing a door that had been left slightly ajar. 2 weeks later, on a sunny Tuesday morning, Naomi's water broke while she was making breakfast. The rush to the hospital, the long hours of labor, Julian holding her hand and coaching her breathing, all blurred together in a haze of pain and anticipation. And then at 6:47 p.m., their daughter entered the world. Naomi held her for the first time, this tiny perfect human with a full head of black curls and Julian's nose. She'd never felt love like this, overwhelming and immediate and fierce. "She's perfect," Julian whispered, tears streaming down his face. "You're both perfect." They named her Sophia, after Julian's mother. Sophia Grace Blackwood Rodriguez. The next few days in the hospital were a bubble of new parent exhaustion and joy. Friends visited, bringing gifts and well wishes. Naomi's mother flew in and cried holding her granddaughter. Simone brought an enormous teddy bear and offered to babysit whenever needed. On their second night home with Sophia, at 2 in the morning during a feeding, Naomi found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. 3 years ago, she'd been on a hotel room floor, bruised and scared, thinking her life was over. Now she sat in a rocking chair in a nursery she'd designed, feeding her daughter while her husband slept in the next room, living a life that exceeded anything she'd imagined possible. "You're going to grow up knowing you're loved," Naomi whispered to Sophia. "Not conditionally, not if you behave a certain way or achieve certain things. Just loved for being exactly who you are. Your dad and I will make sure of it." Sophia finished eating and fell asleep in Naomi's arms. Julian appeared in the doorway, drawn by some parental instinct. "Everything okay?" he whispered. "Perfect. Come sit with us." Julian sat on the ottoman beside the rocking chair, and together they watched their daughter sleep. The moment was quiet and ordinary and absolutely extraordinary. "Do you ever think about where we'd be if things had gone differently?" Julian asked softly. "Sometimes. But mostly I think about how grateful I am things went exactly as they did. Every hard moment, every painful choice, it all led here. To this. To this." They sat in the nursery until Sophia woke for her next feeding, then worked together to change her and settle her back to sleep. It was exhausting and messy and nothing like Naomi had imagined motherhood would be. It was also absolutely perfect. Over the following weeks, they settled into the chaos of new parenthood. Sleepless nights, endless diapers, the steep learning curve of caring for a tiny human. But also profound joy, watching Sophia discover the world, seeing pieces of themselves in her expressions. Naomi took 3 months of maternity leave, during which Blackwood Hotels continued to thrive under the team she'd built. Julian used his flexible CEO schedule to be home as much as possible, sharing every aspect of Sophia's care equally. "This is partnership," Naomi said one evening as they tag-teamed bath time. "Neither of us doing more than the other, both of us figuring it out together." "This is what parenting should look like," Julian agreed, carefully washing Sophia's tiny feet. "Equal responsibility, equal joy." At 6 weeks postpartum, Naomi received a surprising text from a number she didn't recognize. I heard you had a baby girl. I'm happy for you, Naomi. You're going to be an amazing mother. This is the last time I'll contact you. I promise. I'm moving to Seattle for a new job, finally starting over for real. Thank you for teaching me what I needed to learn, even if I learned it the hard way. Be well. Trevor. Naomi showed the message to Julian. What do you think? I think he's finally letting go. Should I respond? That's up to you. Naomi thought about it for a long moment, then typed a simple reply. I hope you find happiness, Trevor. Everyone deserves that. She sent the message and immediately blocked the number. It felt like the right combination of grace and finality. Done? Julian asked. Done. Completely and totally done. And she was. Trevor's ghost had finally been laid to rest. Whatever life he built in Seattle, whatever lessons he'd learned, whatever happiness he found or didn't, it was no longer connected to Naomi in any way. She had her own life to live. Her own family to love. Her own future to build. At 3 months old, Sophia began smiling reliably, and those smiles lit up Naomi's entire world. She returned to work part-time, gradually increasing her hours as she and Julian figured out childcare and schedules. Life settled into a beautiful rhythm. Morning routines with Sophia, work that challenged and fulfilled her, evenings as a family, weekends exploring their city with their daughter. It wasn't always easy or perfect. There were hard days, arguments over dishes, exhaustion that went bone deep. But it was real. It was honest. It was built on a foundation of mutual respect and genuine love. On Sophia's first birthday, they threw a party in their backyard. Friends and family gathered to celebrate, the garden filled with laughter and joy. Naomi looked around at the people who'd supported her journey. Simone, who'd been there through the divorce and beyond. Her mother, who'd never stopped believing in her. Julian's sister, who'd become a true friend. All of them celebrating Sophia, celebrating the family they'd created. Julian found Naomi in a quiet moment, Sophia asleep on her shoulder after the excitement. Happy? He asked. Deliriously. You. Same. This is everything I wanted. Everything we built together. Naomi leaned into him, Sophia nestled between them. 3 years ago I thought my life was ending. Turns out it was just beginning. Best beginning ever. As the party continued around them, Naomi allowed herself one final thought about Trevor. She hoped he'd found some measure of peace and happiness in Seattle. She hoped he'd learned from his mistakes and become a better person. Not for her sake but for his own. But mostly she hoped he'd finally moved on completely. Because she certainly had. Her life was here in this moment with these people. The life she'd fought for, worked for, chosen deliberately. The life that had always been waiting for her to claim it. And she'd never ever let it go.